usual suspect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning, 42 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. East African time. Apologies for being a little bit late. It was due to technical challenges. And yeah, but nonetheless, we are good to be back. I'll be telling you why we were not here last night because of reasons or challenges beyond my own control. As unfortunate as that may sound, and these things do happen. These things happen. Jesus Christ. You know, when systems are going through upgrades, there are things that we never get to know until those things directly impact us. So, but it is what it is. It's very, very unfortunate what I had to experience last night. And the unfortunate bit for me was that it felt like I was the only person facing it. But that's the nature of life. That's the nature of life. Sometimes you get things your way, sometimes you don't, and there's not much I could do about that. So yesterday or last night was quite frustrating, to say the least, to the extent of excuse me, to the extent of us doing a live broadcast. It's not something that I'd wanted to happen, but it ended up happening. So unfortunately, these things do affect us in one way or the other, and I can only hope that we'll get through it in much better way. So I know a lot of you were wondering what's happened to Robert. He's usually on here, come rain, come sunshine, late or otherwise, he often shows up. So last night, we were unable to do our live broadcast for those very reasons. For some reason, I would start, the live, and you know when you're starting the live, it's supposed to there's certain options it's supposed to give you. So mine kept on saying unable to connect at the moment, and it would say try again or end live stream or broadcast. Then if you try to end it, the button was not working. If you say try again, it sort of appeared to work, but to no fruition. So it was really frustrating, to say the least. It was very frustrating what I had to go through. And that situation sort of continues even this morning. There's a lot of functionalities that I can't really access. I do not know why, for some reason, but it happens. It happens. And that's something that is beyond my own control. I wish there was a way around it. I wish there was a way for me to sort of circumvent it. But that's the nature of technology. Is that Lem Extra Special? Lem Extra Special, good morning. Hi. So hi everyone, for those of you that have just joined us, my name is Robert Kesakos and I come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 45 minutes past the hour of 9 a.m. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Wednesday morning, the 24th of June, 2026. I come to you live from Kampala, Uganda. But speaking about my frustrations with YouTube, it happened last night. I could not come. I could not go live. I had wanted us to do the watch along for the game between Ghana and England. Never mind that the game itself was very disappointing. Beyond the results, that was disappointing. The performance in itself was equally disappointing from both teams. I think we would have put that time to better use than watch that game, but nonetheless, I remained very disappointed. So, like I was saying, the situation sort of appears to continue. Happy birthday to my goat. Oh, you're saying happy birthday to Lionel Messi? Happy birthday to him. Hi, Pedri Bola. It's been a minute. I hope you've been doing all right. I hope whatever was keeping you away was well worth it, and that you managed to go through it. So for many of our colleagues here, it's often school, it's often work, and other things that tend to drag us away. But like I was saying, a lot of things are happening within my YouTube environment that are not working the way they should be working. I don't know if YouTube is going through an upgrade. My disappointment is that when I see, when I look elsewhere for other colleagues, everything appears to be fine. They seem to be rolling on the way they should. Because yesterday, I checked out Trevor Noah's account. I checked out Mark Colbridge's account. And another gentleman, they were streaming just fine. I thought it was my internet connection. Tried a different service provider. The situation persisted. I just could not come live. I do not know what happened. Your guess is as good as mine. But I really tried everything that I could, and to zero fruition. But that's the nature of things. That's the nature of life sometimes. It frustrates you in more ways than you can imagine, or in more ways than you would have loved to. But yet you have to find somehow a way to soldier on, to move on and get things and get things going to the best of your ability. So basically, that's what happened. That's why we were unable to be here with you guys last night. But we are here to talk about the world of football, and there's plenty that has happened since then. Well, how much watch hours you got? In terms of what hours, I'm actually not particularly sure in terms of like all the channel, but like you're well aware. I don't know if you're well aware. I don't know the last time you were here, but I remember we were pushing for watch time. We wanted to monetize the channel. That's for starters. We did that in terms of this. You can super chat me. There's membership subscriptions for as low as, by the way, $0.5. You can subscribe to be a support, a fan of the Football Tribe UG channel, and then we're pushing for the other, ad monetization. That will also go to cross that bridge of 4,000 hours, and we continue to push on. To be honest, the numbers are still low when it comes to overall viewership, but then you find signs of encouragement every single other day. People that come on here and super chat me, people that have subscribed to membership. We only have 2 subscribers, by the way. Reluctant Gamer, and the other is who is the other? How can I forget so easily? Let me find them in a snapshot. It's a Reluctant Gamer and Epic Handle. Yes, two members have subscribed to the channel. So really, it's really interesting. So we find the positives to carry on. But in terms of watch hours, I think we are averaging anywhere between 675 to slightly below in the last 28 days. It's not much, but it is better than a lot of it's better than zero. It's better than having it a lot less than that. So anyways, we'll continue with the conversation this morning in as far as the game is concerned. And where do we start? That's the big question. Yesterday, we witnessed Cristiano Ronaldo de Santos Alviro silence his critics as Portugal beat up against Uzbekistan by 5 goals to 0. Then we did witness England, very disappointing, Croatia and Colombia scraping through their own games, and then, things like that. Open YouTube Studio, open monetization tab, and see there. I know how to navigate that sort of area, but maybe I answered you in the process of you typing that comment. But yeah, we do average about 675 hours of watch time in the last 28 days as per the stats. So, but like I said, there's more. We still have a long way to go. We soldier on every day. That's why, like I said, last night was really, really frustrating when we could not come live. But it does happen. Technology disappoints you in ways that you never see coming, in ways you never imagined to be possible, and yet somehow it does. So that's just the nature of the landscape within which we operate. So But with that said, oh, Pedri, what's the about? What's the about? Anyways, with that said, I wish to say this. Okay, let's get into the broadcast. Where do we start? Let's start with England, because there's little to say about England. And I wish England fans were here as I say this. That was a disappointing result. Now, first of all, forget the disappointing result. It was a disappointing performance. But also, in a way, England played in the manner that I expected them to play. A bit conservative. But yesterday was so bad that really they dominated majority of the key statistics of the game. They still could not make it count for anything. By anything, I mean they would have loved to win. They were expected to win. You do not come in a competition and you're one of the favorites and you come up against an underdog, the like of Ghana, and do not win. It's not to say that a result of that nature is impossible to happen in a game of football. It's more the expectation that they ought to have done better, and they did it. It's quite disappointing. But also, you could look at it in two ways. It was a wake-up call for those players, for the managers, that's Thomas Tuchel and his coaching staff. Two, those players need to pull up their stockings. At some point, in the course of that game, as England made changes, at one point they had as many as 5 attackers on the pitch. They had Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka, Morgan Rogers, Eberechi Eze, and still could not score. It reminded me of a saying that too many mice do not dig for themselves holes. In other words, it's the case of the expectation of the other to do better or to be the one to take on the role. I oftentimes use the example of if you share a car with family members. Let's say you're in a family of about 5 grown-ups and you share this one car. You could be 3. And today I drive it, tomorrow Pedri Bola drives it, tomorrow the other day maybe Reluctant Gamer drives it, on another day Epic Handle drives it. So that car could easily be abandoned in terms of overall maintenance because there's an expectation that there's an expectation from within the circle that you are going to take care of it. You expect I'm going to take care of it. I expect the other person is going to take care of it. So in the end, nothing is done for it. Why? Because each one of us has this expectation that it will be the other person. And then similar to how society can behave is that, for example, if I drive it, you expect that I put gas, but then somebody else is going to drive it and not put gas. That kind of thing. So England, in a way, with that example, you almost felt like it's like every player thought the other was going to take responsibility, and in the end, nobody took responsibility. They dominated possession to the tune of 78%, had more than 600 passes, 19 shots on goal, but with only 4 on target. That tells you the lack of effectiveness or clinicalness. Because if out of 19 shots, you could only put 4 on target, that is a poor shot accuracy. 2, they managed to limit Ghana's harm to only 2 shots on goal with 1 on target. In other words, Jordan Pickford did not have much to do. Crazy to think that at the end of the day, the man of the match award was awarded to Jude Bellingham, which I thought he did not deserve. In any case, the Ghanaian goalkeeper deserved it more. He deserved it more, but it wasn't handed to him. That's the nature of the sport. Sometimes it does not award excellence, but it tends to award popularity. Sometimes they make it feel like it's a popularity contest, and yet it shouldn't be that. As disappointing as that sounds, it is the reality of the game, you know. So, and I remember watching a press briefing by Judy Bellingham, and he himself was acknowledging that he does not deserve it. Why? Because he thought the Ghanaians defended so well that at least one of them deserved it. I mean, make it make sense. Sometimes it doesn't, right? So basically, that is what transpired. In terms of England's starting 11, not much was changed from the starting 11 that we saw in the first game against Croatia, apart from Dejan Space starting and Mark Gahey ahead of John Stones. Those were the noticeable changes right from the onset. And then last night, I was scrolling through my social media with all the frustration of a life failing to work. And I landed on a question from one of the best football analysts and radio personality in the country, Mr. David Lumansi, who was asking the question of how somebody explained, he was requesting that somebody explain to him how Noni Madueke gets to start ahead of Bukayo Saka. And obviously, it does not make sense to many people. But the answer to that is simple. It's not because Noni Madueke is a better player or more effective a player than Bukayo Saka. No, that's not the story. I think anyone with a fair share of knowledge, of football knowledge, will know that Bukayo Saka is better. But Bukayo Saka, right from the tail end of last season, has been carrying an Achilles problem. It's called tendinopathy, I think. And he's been used in a very, very sparing manner by both club and country just to make sure that they do not stretch that Achilles beyond its limits, that they do not exacerbate the current problem or issue. It's a discussion that we've had on here before, not particularly to the effect of Bukayo Saka, but particularly to the extent of how players sometimes have to play through injury. And that's the case. Dak Mino says what? What about what? Dak, good to have you on the broadcast. So, to explain it to my senior in David Lumansi, Mod, please, boy. To explain it to my senior, Mr. David Lumansi, it's not it has nothing to do with the tactics. It has nothing to do with the logic of who is a better player. It's everything to do about the player's health in terms of full fitness. Yes, he's been training, but like I said, he's been used sparing. So oftentimes he's accommodated those last few minutes of the game. Mod, please. What do you mean, mod, please? What's that supposed to mean? You know, so it has little to do with his inability or lack of ability, or Madueke's prowess or lack of. It has everything to do with injury. And a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I do not mean majority of people, but most of these being Arsenal fans have inquired, have said, why not just leave him out of it entirely? Because they need their player to be really good for next season. It's a challenge that I've spoken about. Now, yesterday, speak of players being ready for next season. Declan Rice walked off with a limp. And by the time he left the stadium, he had a bandage tied around his calf area, and he walked with a slight limp. Obviously, it's not known the extent of the problem, but that's to say that I don't know if it was just cramping or he has an issue. But for a player like Declan Rice, you must bet that he's playing through some issue or with an injury. And then also, I went on to learn, you say, what's a devil? You are? Oh, I meant to say blackbird. I don't know what none of that means. Duck. I don't know what none of that means. So yesterday, I was meant to learn that Arsenal won't be making any pre-season tours, not to the USA, not to Asia, not They'll stay within the UK or possibly within Europe. They could have a training camp somewhere to sort of help them prepare for the season, but it comes from the understanding of it was a very long season and it's a World Cup year. And for me, the question I put to them is how do they start the season? That's going to be a very, very big issue because first and foremost, I'm convinced beyond reasonable doubt that they need to work on their squad and improve it so that at the start of the season, they can remain competitive without putting pressure on majority of their players who have had this sort of grueling season, who have played football literally non-stop. Which players are we talking about? Currently, of course, David Raya is on the bench with the national team, so not too much energy being wasted or used there. Gabriel Magalhaes, William Saliba, those are at the World Cup. Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Eberechi Eze, Noni Madueke. So, and when you, by extension, you go to the likes of Piero Hincapié, Gabriel Martinelli with the Brazil national team. I'm trying to recall some others, to the best of my ability. Mikel Merino is in that realm, but in other words, they must find a way. They must find a way where they begin the campaign without using those players, without even having to use those players. Oh, Dak says, I'm from Uzbekistan. Oh, how? That's interesting. You're the first person to join us from Uzbekistan. How is Uzbekistan? And let me see. Okay, I don't know much about Uzbekistan. I almost confused it with Azerbaijan, So, but how is Uzbekistan? Good to have you, Dak, on the broadcast. I hope you kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel while you're here with us. So, in the end, players never live to the bidding. No, not Declan Rice, not Anthony Gordon, not Jude Bellingham, not Harry Kane, not Elliot Anderson. Their set pieces were poor, like they were ineffective. They did a lot of things not in the right manner. I had hoped for more, for better. But even the substitutions that came on in Bukayo Saka, he came on around the 64th minute. Nico O'Reilly, I thought Marcus Rashford was a delayed substitution. Morgan Rogers, Eberechi Eze, they did not offer England much. Now, none of the players else that were left elsewhere on the bench, you thought would have offered more than those that were ahead of them. In a way, you thought maybe instead of Marcus Rashford, they would have brought on an Ollie Watkins. I do not know. Aunea, is that how you pronounce the name? You say hello? Please forgive me if I've mispronounced your name. Yesterday, Portugal's game was 10 out of 10. We're getting to that in a bit. So basically, England were very, very disappointing in their very performance. What does Gordon offer? I have failed to accept his football. Well, your guess is as good as mine. And I remember saying this right in their first game, when they played against Croatia. He did not have a good game, by the way. I think he had about only 17 touches on the ball. And I said, Barcelona fans were going to watch that game with a lot of interest. Now, if they watched that game against Croatia with a lot of interest and saw a very electric performance from England, but their new signing in Anthony Gordon was not a good performer on the night, they would have hoped that yesterday was a chance for him to redeem himself. Well, he did not do any of that. So, yeah, it's always going to beg that question. And it does happen very often whenever players are not performing that we do ask ourselves, what is that one good at? Now, first of all, as a player, in terms of his characteristics, in terms of his all-round game, first of all, he offers you pace. He has the eye for goal. He has a good cross in him. He can dribble, pass a player or two, but the rate at which he does that of course, is not as often as how a Lamine Yamal or a Michael Olise is going to do it for you. So those are some of his capabilities. Now, unfortunately for him, he's not having a good tournament, or he's not thriving as things stand. And for as long as the status quo remains, question marks are going to be raised upon him or upon his name. So, but for me, yesterday was, in summary, a very poor performance, a very lacking performance from Team England. That's why I said it's a wake-up call. They must realize that they ought not to be complacent. I thought at some point, I would have loved to see Declan Rice be withdrawn for maybe a Kobe Mainu, because sometimes, I don't know, it's because of the club he plays for or the kind of season they've had, but sometimes you feel Declan Rice is not progressing that ball a lot quicker. He's not playing those advanced passes as quick or as often as you'd love to see him, because he will often receive the ball, he will either pass it sideways or go backwards, and yet there are options ahead of him. He often does not risk playing that pass in between the lines. I'll give you an example. If, let's say, you have a Bukayo Saka somewhere in the flanks, and you have, let's say, a Morgan Rogers somewhere in here, closer to him, with, let's say, a Richie James on the sidelines, and let's say the two players occupying these spaces, one marking an a Morgan Rogers are close by, one filling that space in between the Morgan Rogers space and the pathway to Bukayo Saka. Instead of attempting that line breaking pass to try and find Bukayo Saka, he's going to play it sideways to Richie James because it's a safe thing to do, or at least that's what he feels like. And sometimes I feel it's the wrong mentality. Sometimes you need to take a little bit of a risk and, play that, try and find that pass. It's what makes you better. It's what makes you different. Otherwise, that pass of safety, anybody can play it. We can throw on Mitchell and tell him, whenever you receive the ball, look to play it safe, play to the closest teammate, or backwards to the goalkeeper, and things like that. So I do share a bit of disappointment in Declan Rice, at least per the extent of yesterday's game. But on the side of Ghana, their goalkeeper was really, really good yesterday. Benjamin Asari, he does play in the Ghanaian top flight, where apparently he's been playing for all his entire career, at least I've been learning. And he had a good day in office. So much so that some people thought he deserved man of the match. But like I said, I think it ended up with Jude Bellingham. And he himself could not believe that it had ended up to him. Tell me, since when what example can I use? If the New York Knicks played a game with the City Oilers and it ended in a draw, as in all points level, how do we give a man of the match to a New York Knicks player? Make it make sense. It doesn't, So anyways, I'll leave that at that. And then we'll progress to the game for Portugal. But before we do that, let me go through some of your comments. Okay. Aunea, that was a repeated comment. You said, okay, no worries. I am watching you from Uzbekistan. Do you understand Uzbeks? I do not understand Uzbeks as a language, but I know about Uzbekistan as a country. Because, that's where Kushanov comes from, right? Mitchell says that is Mikel player, so the way Rice fears to risk passes is fetched from his club manager. Yeah, that's what exactly I was saying, that maybe it's, it's because he's so accustomed to playing a certain way with his Arsenal side that he feels he needs to go about his game the same way. And yet sometimes I feel he needs to give us a bit of a variation to his game. Amir says yesterday Portugal was balling. Okay. Let's go to Portugal. Now, a lot was said, a lot was left unsaid. For the first time in as long as I can remember, I participated, observed, watched, listened into multiple forums, and majority of talk following the 1-1 draw against DRC Congo was about Portugal. It was about Cristiano Ronaldo, undeservedly so, because there's reason to justify it. However, the talk was so much on Portugal that it almost failed to give credit where credit is due. We spent so much time discussing, trying to understand and make sense of the inefficiencies of the Portuguese national team that we failed to appreciate the goodness of the DRC Congo team, who, by the way, unfortunately, yesterday lost by 1-0 against Colombia, as Daniel Munoz scored his second goal of the campaign, and there was 2 goals cancelled out for Luis Diaz, one for which I did not agree. But we'll get to that in a bit. So yesterday was an opportunity for Portugal to respond to the critics. The level of the opponent or size of the opponent, notwithstanding, because I've been led to believe Uzbekistan could be somewhere in their 50th place or slightly beyond when it comes to the FIFA rankings. That notwithstanding, they needed to send a message that, first of all, they're a very good team, or that they are as good as advertised. 2, that they can play as a team. 3, that Cristiano Ronaldo still has it in him or can still rise to the occasion, still capable of good moments. 4, that they can get the tactics right. And 5, that Roberto Martinez can get his team selection right. So where do we start from? I thought the team selection was spot on. We saw some amendments or changes to this team. We saw the return of Ruben Diaz in defense to play alongside Renato Viega. We saw a brilliant performance from Joao Cancelo, Nuno Mendes, Vitinha. He was good, but I felt he could have done better and more. I remember there's one time he was dispossessed, and instead of getting on with the game, he sat there expecting and hoping for a foul. I do not like that, by the way, about players. Play the whistle. I'm all about play the whistle. If the whistle has not gone, pick yourself up, get on with it, because there's a slight difference between you staying on that ground and us conceding a goal on the other side simply because it's simply because it's not you've not picked yourself up on time, that's what I told people. The Sabri adds something to players. Imagine he made UG Cranes play better what of Congo with superstars. Exactly. So now yesterday, and then we saw Joao Felix start ahead of Bernardo Silva to that other flank with Pedro Neto retaining his place in the team, and then Bruno Fernandes, and then Cristiano Ronaldo, who, by the way, was given a very high player rating. Okay, yes, he had a good game, but it is what it is. Some of the things that we had discussed, that I had recommended, I saw in yesterday's game. First of all, we had requested that it's not a must that Bernardo Silva must be on the pitch, that Ruben Diaz ought to be in that back line. We saw him. Then Cristiano Ronaldo needs to stay within a certain zone of the pitch. And for a lot of time he did that. He played with the reservation of energy, but as he walked off at the end of the 90 minutes, he seemed to walk with a slight limp. Maybe it's the case of the tiredness or the grueling 90 minutes that sort of weighed on his shoulders or on his legs, that he cramped a bit, and hopefully he will be good for the next game. Then, when it comes to the game itself, or how the team played. They played really well. You could see the connections. You could see the relationships. You could see the trust between Ruben Diaz and Renato Viega. Renato Viega, by the way, I thought had a really, really good game. It's not to say that Uzbekistan gave them much of a challenge, but he did well. Nuno Mendes had a good game. So did Joao Cancelo. I thought they had a good game. Bruno Fernandes popped up with an assist. Nearly created another. Joao Felix had a fairly good game. Cristiano Ronaldo responded to the critics. Having not scored in his first game against Mexico, he was criticized a lot. And for both the right and wrong reasons, in some respects. It depended on how you sliced it. You say, bro, I'm studying English because I'm from Uzbekistan, not America. Okay, that's dark. I wouldn't hold it against you if you did not know the language. I wouldn't, because it's not my primary language, but it is our official language, and it's the language that I choose to communicate with the rest of the world for us to have a fairly good connection. Otherwise, if I knew Mandarin, maybe I would have spoken Chinese, but I do not know that. So anyways, there was a lot to love about the Portuguese team yesterday in terms of their overall performance in regards to what they offered us on the pitch. So they dominated possession to the tune of 66%, had a total of 16 shots on goal, with 9 of them going on target. They scored 5 goals. Cristiano Ronaldo scoring a brace in that one, opening the deadlock in as early as the sixth minute. But before he picked up his brace. Now, I saw a sense of maturity, a sense of leadership, a sense of acknowledgement of what's best for the team, and that's what we've been asking Cristiano Ronaldo to do. Make decisions that are for the team, not for the individual. Yes, the individual success, the hunger is always going to be there for a player like Cristiano Ronaldo. That's what has sustained him through all his career. But there has to come a point where the benefit of the team, the good of the team, rises above anybody's personal or individual ambitions. When they won that free kick in around the 16th minute or thereabout, at the quarter-hour mark of the game, obviously, in years gone by, we would describe that as Cristiano Ronaldo territory. But let's be honest, we do not have many players that score from the direct free kicks as frequent as you would love it. Once in a while, somebody will pop up with a free kick or 2 or 3 in a campaign, and then suddenly that's the dead ball specialist. I'm sending you greetings from Uzbeks. Bro, thank you so much. Greetings to you too from Uganda and Ugandans at large. Thank you so much. So, when they get that free kick, he sets up the ball, he goes into position, typical Cristiano Ronaldo position, as though he's going to take the free kick. But deep down, a decision had been made. And I remember watching, as soon as they got that free kick, in my mind, I was thinking it better be not Cristiano Ronaldo to take that free kick. Otherwise, it's going to be a waste of our time. It's not going to lead to fruition. He's either going to fire it in the wall or somewhere off target, if on target, somewhere close to the goalkeeper. That was my thinking. And from the onset, my choice for a free kick taker in that position, in that moment, would have been Bruno Fernandes. Because whereas he does not score them in plenty, he does know how to hit them. And he has scored a couple. So that's where I was. And yet somehow, they managed to craft out a plan. While all the attention was on Cristiano Ronaldo, it was Nuno Mendes that stepped up and converted from the free kick. That was in the 17th minute, and it was 2-0. And I thought it was not a stroke of a genius, but it was a stroke of leadership. For Cristiano Ronaldo to realize, okay, I love taking free kicks. I have scored them before. I think I'm capable of scoring this one. But given the sort of positioning it is in, I must acknowledge that somebody else within this team is better positioned to strike this ball other than just me, you know? So Doug says, okay, thank you, bro. I'm a girl and I'm 12 years old. Really? 12 years old? You're not supposed to be on a broadcast like this. Anyways, there's nothing wrong with what we say in terms of age. But I hope there's a bit of parental guidance. I know the effects of social media and how quickly it can spiral out of, Zafa UPG says we fought to the end. That's Zafa. Now, in terms of Uzbekistan, they gave us a fairly good performance by measure of their own standards and quality. They popped up with a goal. Unfortunately, the first goal, which was a very, very beautiful strike, had to be ruled out, which was the only goal actually that they scored. It had to be ruled out because of the foul on Joao Cancelo. And I wish there had not been a foul on Joao Cancelo. That would have been one of the most beautiful goals of the tournament. But unfortunately, it could not stand because of that. So, but anyways, I appreciated that sort of leadership. Then in the 39th minute, Cristiano Ronaldo turned up and scored to make it 3-0 as he picked his brace. Now, remember, coming into this game, what had happened was that Lionel Messi scored a hat-trick in his debut game for this World Cup against Algeria, went against Austria and scored a brace. Kylian Mbappe scored 2 against Senegal, and then he came up against Iraq and he scored a brace. So Messi has 5 goals, Kylian Mbappe has 4, and the talk is all on them and their success. Really, the talk about Cristiano Ronaldo is how he is failing the Portuguese team and how best they can operate without him. And there's justification for all those things. So yesterday he needed to respond to critics, and he did well. So he scored the 2 goals. Technically, the good goals. When you look at his positioning for the first goal, when he received that ball from Joao Cancelo, and the way he tucks it to the near post, that's experience for you. And then when you look at his second goal in the 39th minute, when Bruno Fernandes provides the assist, the manner in which he waits for that ball to almost glide across him, almost as though going to the tail end of it, and then he strikes it back to the bottom corner. Because in waiting for that ball to go across his entire body, it forced the goalkeeper to close upwards on the near post, hoping or thinking he was going to place it there. And then he goes back entirely in the different direction. It was good to see. But beyond it being good to see, again, it was a show of experience. It was a show of, I have been here before and I have done it all. So beautiful, beautiful goal that he scored. And it was 3-0 by halftime. Then in the second half, unfortunately, Nematovu did score in the back of his own net to make it 4-0 for the Portuguese, while second half substitute Rafael Leao also scored to make it 5-0. But prior to that, Cristiano Ronaldo had not had many opportunities to make the hat-trick. It's something that he wanted to achieve, but unfortunately for him, it did not fall in place. There's that second half free kick where the ball is flicked onto him. He starts again. When you look at the arrangement and the organization for that free kick is again brilliant. Cristiano Ronaldo is engaged in the overall organization as though he's the one going to strike the ball. And then when the free kick is about to be taken, he makes the run into the box and goes past the wall, really staying onside as Bruno Fernandes flicks that ball over the top for him. And he gets a good strike at it. But the Uzbekistan goalkeeper had a good read of the situation and he managed to block the resultant shot. So that one looked really, really brilliant as well. So I must commend them for that setup. That setup was another show of a well thought thing. And I liked that Cristiano Ronaldo was relinquishing responsibility when it came to set piece play for his our teammates to say, you're better suited to take this. In this position, Bruno Fernandes, you're the guy for that. For us, earlier on, it was Nuno Mendes. When it came to set pieces, of course, it was Bruno Fernandes. The corner kicks, when you look at the fourth goal, it is the result of a corner kick from Bruno Fernandes. While the Portuguese players were pushing on internally into the 18-yard box, he recommended that they push out because he had a plan. And then he sort of plays a low ball to the near post where Cristiano Ronaldo runs across. Unfortunately, he was unable to get a touch to it. And then it is Joao Felix who flicks that ball onto the defender, and it bounces off the defender and goes into the back of the net for that fourth goal. So a lot of things went well for the Portuguese side. Okay. Dark says you might know that Uzbekistan played Portugal, but Portugal won as an Uzbekistan. It feels like we lost. Obviously, you lost because Portugal were the better team all day long. Mitchell says that was exactly Bruno's style of assist. Yeah, that's true. Summerbank says, my God, Sui. She's referring to the celebration of Cristiano Ronaldo. Then there's somebody called Keshav. Keshav says hi. Summerbank says, and my captain assisted. Brilliant performance. Yes, he did assist. Almost got 2 assists, but one won't be credited to him because of the own goal. Then Mitchell responding to Dark Mino, why cry? What surprise did you have in the game? Mitchell, you'll be surprised of how so much people believe in their own teams. It's a case of, I don't know. For me, as a neutral, of course, it's the case of, for Uzbekistan, it was the case of 1% chance, 99% hope. And maybe, Dakia is coming from that, Dakmino is coming from that place of having that 9% hope that at least something would happen for them in the game. But unfortunately, it did it. Good morning to all CR7 fans here. Okay, now, first of all, Cristiano Ronaldo scoring in his 6th consecutive World Cup. I mean, that's really, really wonderful. And the thing, obviously, every time he does something, every time Messi does something, it ignites a debate somewhere in comparison of the two. But like I've constantly said, I've never been one to pick and choose this or that. Maybe if at one point I ever did, I may not recall per se, but I've oftentimes refrained myself from having to choose sides. First of all, we've been blessed to watch them, Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, in the same space of an era of about the last 15 odd years. 2, competition drives competition. I'll give you an example. If we are both making the same product and you're making sales, we are all constantly working to improve the quality of our product, the quality of our customer care, because competition drives quality. It's the case of MTN and Airtel. If MTN does something good, Airtel is looking to replicate it so that they can better serve their customers. In the end, that competition, it's the customers that benefit. So at the height of the competition between Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi, it's the football and the football fans that benefited. You sort of imagine, put yourself in that sort of space where, in a world where that competition or rivalry between the two guys was not there, maybe we would have not gotten them to, we've not gotten to see the sort of numbers that they posted across the entirety of their careers. Because, I mean, if you're so good and nobody's second to you, then how make it make sense where it becomes so worth it. At one point, you become complacent. So none of these guys ever became complacent because they knew if I become complacent, he's going to surpass me or vice versa, whichever way you look at it. So that sort of healthy competition between the two guys is what sort of leads people into that sort of debate. But you ought to give credit where it is all due to both sides. What Lionel Messi has done has been brilliant, exceptional to say the least. When you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, wherever he's gone, right from Sporting CP to Manchester United to Real Madrid to Juventus to back to Manchester United to the Saudi Pro League at Al Nassr, there's nowhere he's gone and you said he failed. There's nowhere you go and you say, at that time when he was there, he failed. No, he has not failed. So that is not by accident. And in some of his words, he said, if you work hard enough, God will help you. So, and he talked about the lows of, the last couple of days in the aftermath of the 1-1 draw with Portugal, with the 1-1 draw with DRC Congo, and how they needed to rise to the occasion, and they gave us a performance. Now, my challenge for them is, or question for them, is whether they will be able to turn up against Colombia, because that is going to be a very, very good test. It is going to be as good as a test as you'd want or expect or have at the knockout stages of the competition. But we'll get to that in a bit. Okay. Mitchell says, if I'm a Uzbek, I would be surprised for not conceding 3+ scores. Let me tell you, okay, you may feel that way, but part of their disappointment maybe is that they had their goal cancelled out, and it was the right decision to make. But oftentimes, countries or fans come in these competitions knowing that we may not perform well. We are the underdogs. Their expectations are not that high. But that's why a team will score and they're 5-0 down, and their fans will celebrate. Why? Because it's a moment of history. It's something to savor. They have to savor that moment for what it is. Not because they're going to win. Not because they believe they will win anyway. Not because it means worth a point. But in terms of the optics, the reputation, to say, at least we did this at the World Cup. At least we scored a goal. I'll give you an example. DRC Congo came into this edition hoping to avoid the humiliation they had suffered, was it in 1974, when they lost to the likes of Yugoslavia by, was it 9 goals? And then they lost to Brazil 3-0. They lost all their games. So, and returned home in humiliation. So this time round, you pick a point against Portugal. That's brilliant. You score your first goal at the World Cup through Yohan Wissa. That's brilliant. Yes, they were unable to win yesterday against Colombia, but and they will be disappointed with the results, but they take something out of that to say, yeah, well, we had a good game. And the DRC fans may be disappointed in the result, but a part of them will be appreciative for watching their team sort of compete the manner in which they competed, to say the least. Okay, Dak says, I'm heartbroken because I'm from Uzbekistan and Uzbekistan lost to Portugal. Okay, understandable. Stop crying. What witchcraft tears? Okay, 9-0. Thanks, Mitchell, for that clarification. Ash says, park the bus, football should be banned. What Ghana did yesterday was hard to watch. I'm sorry. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again without any fear of contradiction whatsoever. The ends will always justify the means if you get the result that you want. For a team that had beaten up against Panama in their opening game by 1-0, all they needed yesterday was a point to guarantee their advancement out of that group, because regardless of what happens, because Croatia won. So let's assume it this way, that the result from the results from the final day are as such that because you have England 4 points, Ghana 4 points, Croatia 3 points. Ghana are going to be playing against Croatia. England will play against Panama. If England beat up against Panama, they would almost guarantee finishing at the summit of the group with 7 points. But if Croatia also beats Ghana, they'll manage to post 6 points, which helps them finish second in the group and qualify directly to the round of 32, which then would imply that Ghana would have finished third with only 4 points. But those 4 points would then qualify them to the round of 32 as among the 8 teams that qualify as third best finishers. So for them, it's a perfectly executed game plan. And you cannot bet yourself on the very last fixture. The same way I expect or think that Ghana can lose to Croatia is by extension the same way I can believe that they are capable of beating Croatia or stunning them, or at least picking up a point. So whether they played haram football, whether it was not entertaining, it will not matter to the Black Stars. What matters to Carlos Queiroz and his players is that they picked up a very, very valuable point. A very, very valuable point. And that point almost guarantees them a place in the round of 32. So you ought to look at it in that sense. Then the other point that I'll make is that there's no team that is obligated to play in a certain way that suits an opponent. I'll give you an example. If you go into a fight with somebody, you cannot dictate how they fight you back. No, you cannot dictate that. You know? So everybody fights to their strength. If in Ghana's wisdom, the best game strategy was to be conservative, for which they were, so be it. At the end of the day, they got the result, you know? So that's how I would look at it. Okay, that says, come on, give me Mol. I'm your fan from Uzbekistan anyway. Okay. Mitchell responding to us says, stop pretending. Where were you? Where were you then? Sorry, where were you when Arsenal was playing haram football and won the Premier League? Mitchell, Ash is a Tottenham Hotspur fan, and therefore she does not mean well, see anything good or valuable in that Arsenal side. So, okay, Ash says that style of football does not bring any form of confidence to the team. A better team like Japan would surely knock them out at the upcoming stages. Now, let me cut you short there. Let's say they make it to the round of 32 and meet whoever they meet, and somehow they play the same style of football, scrape their way into the round of 16. And along the way, as you know the knockout stages, and you sort of end up meeting them again. If they bring the same strategy and you cannot break it down and they take it to penalties, it becomes 50-50. If you end up losing to them on penalties, history will not remember how poorly they played or how very defensive they were when they knocked out England. History will simply write, Ghana knocked out England 5-3 on penalties, 5-4 on penalties, 6-5 on penalties. That's what it will record. When you go back to 1988, when PSV Eindhoven were winning the UEFA Champions League title, I think they beat Benfica in the finals. Then at the time known as the European Cup. They beat Benfica, I think 6-5 on post-match penalties. It doesn't matter how they got there. It matters that they got there. Because along the way in that path included a 1-1 draw at the Santiago Bernabeu and a goalless draw at their own turf. They went, I think, through the quarterfinals and the semifinals on away goals rule, drawing 1-1 and the game ending 0-0 at home. That's how they got through it. So, in other words, the justified the means. Okay, that says bye, bro. Bye to you. And you're talking about a team, a better team like Japan. When you say a better team like Japan, that's you acknowledging that England were not a better team last night, or were not as good a team. So that's an indictment on the English national team as well. Okay, Ash says, come on, bro. 0 shots at halftime is anti-football. What is that 32 passes completed around 38 minutes mark, while England had 292 passes? That is bad. Now, my question to you, Ash, is going to be, 292 passes completed within a span of 38 minutes. To what result? To what effect? Because it doesn't matter if you make 1,000 passes in 10 minutes, if that's even possible, for as long as you do not register the most important statistic of a game, which is a goal, it's all showbiz. It's all, you have nothing left to show for it. So, in the 32 passes completed, as you indicate, they lost nothing, but they gained something. They gained confidence in the game because they were not giving you chances, you know. So for them, it was a game plan well executed. Okay, Raymond Kangumba says hi. Keith Smith and Lamine Kamara should sign and make move deal for Newcastle right now. Thank you so much, Raymond Kangumba, for being part of the podcast, and good morning. Raymond, until such a time when Newcastle actually does business, we'll get to it. But England were disappointing, Ash. You ought to remember that. You ought to let it sink in. Okay, so in the other results, yesterday, Jesus Christ, football, you know. In the other results, Panama lost to Croatia by a goal to nil. I only watched the first half of that game before retiring to myself because I've come to the realization that some of these games are not worth it for me. But today I'm looking forward to watching Brazil on match day 3. The return of Neymar Santos Jr. is going to be a key part of that. So, but Budimia's goal with Josep Stanisic providing the assist is what decided the game, or all the 3 points for Team Croatia against Panama in the 54th minute. Then subsequent to that, we saw a game between DRC Congo and Colombia. Colombia scoring some goals, 3 goals that they scored that were ruled out for different reasons. And among the ruled out goals was a goal from Daniel Munoz, ruled out for offside. Another by Luis Diaz ruled out for offside. Another was deemed to be a foul on the last defender, so it wasn't given. Now, that goal that was ruled out for what was deemed to be a foul on the last defender by Luis Diaz is the one that I had a bone to pick with. I felt that was soft a foul to give away. And somebody, the people with a school of thought or who say there's no such thing as a soft foul, it's either foul or it's not a foul. I understand where they're coming from, but I also come from a position where I believe fouls are not equal. That's why some are worth yellow cards, others just a mere warning, others not even worth a warning, others are worth a red card. It's the perfect example I can use is sin. And often I say for believers, when you commit sin, if I lie to you guys, let's say that, what lie should I tell you? Let's say if I lied that I'm from Kenya, yet in actual sense I'm from Uganda, we cannot equate that to murder. So lying in itself is a sin, but we cannot say, yeah, the other guy committed murder, you're both sinners. Yes, we are both sinners. But when we ask what sins we committed and he committed murder and I lied to my people, there's no way we are equating that. So You took somebody's life, you got to be here. I lie to my people that I'm from Kenya instead of saying I'm from Uganda, I'm going to be here. So basically, you must think of it in those terms. So yes, for me, there's such a thing as a soft power. So I felt that was a soft power, in my humble opinion. And anyways, so DRC Congo were quite not good enough on the day. We're not quite good enough on the day. They had an XG of 0.37, only one shot on target, and that came very late. That came very late on in the game to force the Colombian goalkeeper into a save. Colombia had 9 shots on goal. They had 5 shots on. They had 9 shots on target and 5 off target. Blocked shots were 6. DRC Congo had 4 shots off target and 2 shots are blocked. Possession, Colombia dominated it to the tune of 64% compared to 36% for DRC Congo. I think that was to be expected. DRC Congo looked to set up in an almost similar manner over a 5-3-2 kind of system, but it just never worked them out for them last night. They just never could get the stride or the proper footing in the game. As at least that brings some form of confidence that you are trying to create something rather than sitting back. What if England scored a goal around 15 minutes, then Ghana whole game plan vanishes? Well, now, game plans do not vanish because teams have conceded. Teams change game plans to adapt to situations in the game. I'll use the very example that you've used. If our game plan is to sit back and frustrate England, and perhaps by extension of that, we are thinking we'll catch them on the counter-attack, which, by the way, they tried to do on a couple of occasions and quite unsuccessfully, though it's still a strategy. You may not like the strategy, but it is a strategy. Had they conceded in the, let's say, opening 15 minutes, maybe they would have adapted their own strategy to suit the circumstances of the game, but it never got to that. So we never got to see what their plan B would have been. So I do not want to imagine it that they only had one game plan. And remember, all plans are as good as they are on paper until when you get yourself in the thick of action. And that's when your situational analysis begins to change. We saw a very electric England against Croatia. We did not see the same. And I've constantly said, when you're playing against teams that are almost parking the bus, you ought to do certain things to try and unlock that. England have the keys. They just did not use them. In other words, move the ball much quicker. Try to get people out of positions. Try and shoot from distance. But a lot of that did not happen. It was quite sporadic when it happened. There's an attempt from Bukayo Saka, second half substitute from distance, and that kind of thing. When you go back to the Colombia versus DRC Congo game, oh my. One of the things that I loved about that game was that, and I've watched highlights of it, I did not watch the game live, was the Colombians were very, very intentional on shooting that ball from distance. Why? They knew that Congo were going to be quite defensively solid. But you had Luis Diaz, you had James Rodriguez, and all these other guys attempting to shoot from distance. And it almost paid off. In the end, they managed to create other chances with line-breaking passes, with long passes. But I wanted to see more of that with the England national team. Actually, for me, every time I see that, it's a reminder of a Steven Gerrard, a Frank Lampard, a Xabi Alonso, those players who see a little bit of space and they're like, okay, this is not miles away from me. I'm going to have a crack at it. They may not always be successful, but it's worth the attempt for as long as you can keep it on target. So for me, that was a positive takeaway from the Colombia game. England did not have any of that. They tried one in a setup for Declan Rice. You're slightly over the bar. So for as long as you're looking to score that perfect goal, you want things to be played in a certain manner, in a certain pattern, it may not work your way or the way you anticipate or hope it does. And the sooner you come to terms with that, the better you could be. Okay. Well, I think I shouldn't criticize Ghana. After all, what they can do, what can they do with a forward like Jordan Ayew? You almost now you're starting to get it, because a game plan comes from the idea of the acknowledgement of your strength as a team as well as your weaknesses. So if you believe that as an opponent or as a team you have certain weaknesses, I mean, they had Inaki Williams. They deployed Jordan Ayew and Anton Smith to the flanks, Thomas Partey and Sido as the central midfielders. So it's that to say we're in our attack we're not as good as them. So how then do we get a best possible result? Let's congest these areas. Let's deny them spaces in these sorts of areas where we think they can hurt us. And in the end, it worked out perfectly well. So they got the point. The ends justify the means. Anyways, moving on to today's fixtures. Switzerland are up against Canada. That game, like I've told you previously, the World Cup starting today officially enters match day 3 of the tournament. And what that then implies is that you're going to have 2 games kicking off at the same time. Excuse me. You're going to have 2 games kicking off at the same time. With 2 games kicking off at the same time, what that means, because it's the final group stage games, it's to avoid any form of syndicate whatsoever or corruption in the game to say, yeah, Dan has won, therefore help us, achieve this and that. It's to cut out all that. Well, we are in talks to sign Matthias Fernandes. I personally do not want him for 80 million. After all, he's a double relegated player. Also, why spend that amount on a midfielder when you can get a striker? Let's get to that, Ash, in a bit. Let's first wrap up with this conversation of the World Cup briefly. So, Switzerland against Canada from Group B, I think. Yes, they have Switzerland and Canada have 4 points each. Why is it showing word limits when I type? I think similar to other platforms, there's a limit on characters for comments during lives. I don't know if it's just during lives or comments as well. I've experienced that on TikTok. Very, very frustrating, because sometimes you need an extra bit of characters to drive your point home, but they sort of break it. And as frustrating as it is, that's a platform policy, not a me thing. So blame it on YouTube. So Canada, Switzerland both have 4 points. Bosnia and Qatar both have a point. So the best possible result between Switzerland and Canada would be a draw, because if it's a draw, they both finish in the top 2. Then Bosnia and Qatar, one of them must win. I don't know whether it will be Qatar or Bosnia, but a win is what works for any one of those, because a win would mean to go to 4 points. And with 4 points, you could earn yourself a place at the round of 32 as one of the best 3rd place finishers from the group stages. So those 2 games will kick off at 10 p.m. East African time. Switzerland versus Canada, as well as Bosnia versus Qatar. Those are the 2 games. Then, by extension, from Group C, still, okay, these ones will come tomorrow. which will be Thursday. In other words, at 1 a.m. in the night, Morocco take on Haiti, while Scotland take on Brazil. Now, Scotland is one of those bogey sides for Brazil. They constantly beat Brazil, and Brazil will be wary of their day's opponents. Now, Brazil lead the group with 4 points. Morocco second with 4 points. Scotland with 3 points. Haiti bottom. Now, Scotland and Brazil both beat Haiti to have the point study that they have. Obviously, Brazil also shared the spots with Morocco in a 1-all draw. In terms of this group, Morocco have a slightly easier game. You're coming up against the Haiti side that have already lost it. You know, they've lost 2 games. They are as good as out of the competition. For Brazil, even a draw would work for them to secure their 50th point. But they are up against Scotland. They may not look that fancy, but they're a team with a bit with some fight and grit in them. So do not miss out on that action. And Neymar Santos Jr. is back and ready to feature in for Brazil at the World Cup. I do not suspect he will be given a nod to start, but he could be given minutes to play. So those are the 2 games. Excuse me. And then by extension, still on Thursday in the wee hours, South Korea will be up against South Africa at 4 a.m., while Czech Republic will be up against Mexico for the final games of Group A. So in other words, we're going to have Group B, Group C, and Group A all be wrapped up for match day 3. And then still subsequently, or still on Thursday at 11 p.m., I don't know why the kickoff is being extended here. I mean, why are they doing this to us? Jesus Christ. We've had games kicking off at 8 p.m. and as early as 7 p.m. Why are you pushing the game between Curaçao and Cote d'Ivoire at 11 p.m., a game between Ecuador and German at 11 p.m.? As in Group E. But in Group F at 2 a.m., Tunisia take on Netherlands. I think Tunisia will lose. Japan, Sweden, that's a blockbuster of a game. Japan, Sweden. It's one that I would love to watch. So it kicks off at 2 a.m. That's on Friday, you know. And then Paraguay against Australia, Turkey, who have already been sent home following 2 defeats, 1-0 against Paraguay and 2-0 against Australia, will be up against USA at 5 a.m. So that's how the schedule will write. Okay, now let's get to the world of transfers, and we'll begin with Ash's comment, because Ash is saying, you say, thanks, man. I had my frustration with England game with Ghana. I won't watch a single game till that German versus Ecuador game. Bye. Now, Ash, before you sign out, I wanted to respond to your comment about Matthias Fernandes. When you say, because you said, well, we are in talks to sign Matthias Fernandes. I personally do not want him for 80 million pounds after he's had double relegation. By double relegation, you mean to say got relegated with Wolves, signed for West Ham and got relegated. Now, you ought to remember, he wouldn't be the first player to have suffered that fate. You remember Aaron Ramsdale with Sheffield United, with AFC Bournemouth, and then subsequently with us, and then he moved out to Arsenal and then got relegated with Southampton. So I'll stick around to listen. Okay, so about Matthias Fernandes, first of all, for all the teams that are interested in his services, I do not think he's worth 80 million pounds. And I've seen Man United fans speak about this, and in particular, I say Mark Goldbridge, because Manchester United are also interested. They equally do not believe he's worth 80 million pounds. West Ham are, by the way, demanding up to 85. And this is what I've said. I wish big teams could conspire against some of these smaller or mid-table teams. And by conspire, I mean to say is that if there's a player that's on the market, that is a target for these big teams, I don't know if it is possible for them to have backdoor conversations to say, dear Tottenham, we know you're interested in Matthias Fernandes, and so are we. But for purposes of keeping this market insane, let's not exceed 65 million pounds or 70 million pounds in attempting to sign Matthias Fernandes. Now, the player can be sold on whichever project he so wishes to go to or play for in terms of what wages, incentives are being offered for him. And then, but when it comes to the actual cost of the player, Tottenham, Man United, I don't know who else is interested. But Arsenal have also looked at the player, as well as PSG. Let's agree amongst us that we cannot pay West Ham more than 70 million pounds. Now, let West Ham take the 70 million pounds from whichever club of those that are interested, who has better payment terms, will maybe get the green light. But the idea that he should cost 80 million pounds for a player that only last summer cost 38 million pounds plus 4 million pounds in expected add-ons, for him to have already doubled his value within a space of a year is not impossible, but it's just not economically viable. I mean, why are we exaggerating the market? This is the same thing I've said about Elliot Anderson. As Nottingham Forest are demanding in the excess of 120 million pounds for a 23-year-old who has had 2 good seasons at Nottingham Forest. He's a good player, but he's not a Vitinha. We're not talking about Xavi. We're not talking about a Sergio Busquets. You're not buying a Patrick Vieira. You're not buying a Roy Keane. You know, I would even make an argument he's not a Joao Neves. And yet somehow the market wants us to believe, oh, he's so good that he justifies or warrants that price tag of 120 million pounds. Because he may be worth a reasonable amount of money for the football he plays. How about the commercial side of it? Does it make viable sense on the commercial front? Present day, if any club signed Cristiano Ronaldo for 120 million pounds, do you know why I would be inclined to take it up or to believe in it? Why? Because his commercial value offers you that. The football may no longer have much to offer, but his commercial value alone offers you that. It's going to fetch in the money when it comes to merchandise sales. Are you telling me that Manchester City are so sold on Elliot Anderson that they believe if they sign him for the excess of 120 million pounds, they're going to make at least anywhere between 40 to 60 million pounds in merchandise sales on a player like Elliot Anderson? I'm not inclined to believe so. Not really. So I have my frustrations when it comes to the exaggerations and the excesses of the transfer window. And what I've said about Matthias Fernandes is the same thing I've said about Elliot Anderson. Let all the clubs that are interested in services backroom those staff to say, nah, we're not paying that. Because in paying that, it's as if to say, he's the only player in his position that does what he does. Since when did scouting become this lazy? That you've scanned the entire world of football, from the dusty pitches of Africa to the beaches of Sao Paulo in Brazil, throughout the coastal lines of Europe and beyond, through Asia, and did not find a player worth the salt that plays as good or even better than Elliot Anderson. I'm not sold. I'm not sold. Unfortunately, I may not have the examples on my fingertips, but even Ruben Neves is a better midfielder than Elliot Anderson, in my humble opinion, by the way. You know? So, in Manchester City, expressing a willingness to pay in the excess of 120 million pounds for a player like Elliot Anderson is dooming the market. We're going to be as doomed, you know? Okay. Ustamov, is that how you pronounce the name? Ustamov? You say my Uzbekistani, you're from Uzbekistan. Hi, Ustamov. Good to have you on the broadcast. Then Ash says, I would never in my life pay 85 million for Matthias Fernandes. Let United have him. He will be the next Ugarte. Why no one is looking for Oshman? Well, I do not anticipate he will be the next Ugarte. And he could be a brilliant signing for any of the teams that are interested in his services. Tottenham, PSG, Man United, or Arsenal, whichever the team is. I just do not think he should command that price tag. Because for me, the question is, how about players that are better than him? How much then should they cost? So Matthias Fernandes is a bit pricey for a 21-year-old Portuguese midfielder, who, by the way, did not even make it to the World Cup squad. Just say. Okay, moving on. To other deals. We know that Tottenham are also interested in signing Sandro Tonali from Newcastle. Apparently, they are willing to pay at least 85 million pounds for his signature, according to some sources. We'll have to wait and see how that deal goes down, or whether it will happen. Then quickly, we know that Chelsea have agreed a deal to sign Marco Pallisteri, to sign him from to sign Marco Palestra from Atlanta in a deal worth 55 million euros. Now, Inter Milan were in advanced talks with Atlanta to sign him, and their offer was 45 million euros as guaranteed fees plus 5 in expected add-ons, rising to 50 for the 21-year-old right back / right wing back. But there's been some stiff competition, and Chelsea swooped in. They came with better terms, and they've agreed a deal to sign him, to sign Marco Palestra from Atlanta. A verbal agreement is in place between all parties. Atlanta will receive a package in the excess of 55 million euros, and it's a deal waiting to be done. So Chelsea have hijacked that Inter move. And this is what I've been telling you guys. If your team is interested in a player and they slip on the job, they're going to be blown out of the water. The other day, it was Liverpool hijacking Newcastle's deal for Victor Munoz. Today, it's Chelsea hijacking a deal for Inter Milan in their pursuit for Marco Palestra. And that is happening. So we'll see. Inter Milan are looking for a replacement for Denzel Dumfries. And then, okay, now, bruh, they want 100 million. I strangely do not want him either. I personally don't rate him. I'm sorry. Now, again, for me, the desperation of clubs in expressing the willingness to pay over and above what I believe will be a justifiable value of a particular player is the failure of scouting. Because I don't know if you would be able to tempt a player like Manuel Locatelli from Juventus. But even if you were not to, how come all these teams go and scout players and bring them in on a fairly cheap price? Obviously, they take a risk of testing them out and then building them, and then it eventually works and the big teams come calling. I understand that bit. But why are big teams no longer scouting young raw talent or talent that is little known to many? Ask yourself that question. For me, it's a failure of scouting. Because it looks like every big team is looking around the same pool. Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, all interested in Morgan Rogers. Like he's the best thing to happen to football as far as the number 10 is concerned, as of present day, which I do not believe to be the case. He's going to cost you anywhere between 75 to 100 million pounds. And according to reports from Aston Villa, he's going to cost that. Do I believe he's worth 100 million pounds? He's not a 100 million pound player. The same way I did not think Jack Grealish was a 100 million pound player. But that's just the nature of the market. I wish these teams, the big teams, could have a kitchen cabinet, an official kitchen cabinet, where they say, look, Man United, you're interested in Matthias Fernandes. Look, you're interested in Morgan Rogers. Look, Chelsea, let's not be willing to pay above this amount of money. We can all present our projects. We can all sell ourselves to the player. We can all, but we cannot exceed this amount of money in pursuit of this player. Depending on who has the most preferred terms, let the player choose where he wants to go and Villa to accept. But for as long as it remains an uncontrollable market, we're going to wake up one day and a player only as good as Elliot Anderson is commanding 150 million pounds to 200 million pounds, which is not a good thing, Imagine the quality we have at the club at the centre-back position with Senesi and Van Heek. Good quality. Not to mention Mickey van de Ven and Cristian Romero, Mitchell says, West Ham jokes a lot. Okay. Ash says, Jack Grealish is the biggest fraud man. All he does is to dribble the ball a little bit and then passes it back 8 out of 10 times. I want Somerville or Mitoma, bro. Mitoma is a very good player, but unfortunately he's very, very injury prone. And given Tottenham's recent injury problems, where they've lost so many players through injury over the last course of 2 seasons, I wouldn't recommend Kaoru Mitoma. He's a good player, that's for sure. But his injury record is oftentimes very concerning. Then you say, you mentioned Crescencio Somerville. Crescencio Somerville is a player who has attracted interest from the likes of AC Milan, from the likes of Aston Villa, from the likes of Manchester United. They're all interested in his services. To the effect of Tottenham, I have not had any links linking him with Tottenham because Tottenham are apparently interested in Cody Gakpo from Liverpool. So we have to wait and see how things go down on that front. But I understand and appreciate the attraction that Crescencio Somerville is attracting at the moment. Okay. Ayan Pandi says, hey guys, do you know Virati Kohli, the cricketer? Please, bro, tell me I'm requesting. Do you know Virati Kohli, the cricket player? Okay, then Manchester City are interested in signing or raiding Chelsea for Malo Gusto. Now, previously, Manchester City have been linked with the potential move for Chelsea's Enzo Fernandez, but not much headway has made to that effect. But they are interested in signing Malo Gusto. We know that Chelsea have been wanting to sign we know that Man City have been wanting to sign a right back for quite some time. He's not the only option. They also have Dino Livramento on their shortlist for preferred right backs. But Malo Gusto, for whom Chelsea are willing to sell for the right fee, or believed to be in the region of 45 million pounds. We wait to see what decision the clubs will make, or whether Man City will firm up that interest and make a formal approach. So that's what I would say about that, But yeah, transfers continue to rage on. Obviously, Atletico de Madrid have told, Julian Alvarez that you may have dreams, but the club also has dreams. And for as long as Barcelona are not willing to pay your release clause, you're going to stay put. So that is what is happening in as far as the transfers are concerned. as at of the moment. Obviously, we've spoken before about Arsenal and the pursuit of Morgan Rogers. I, for one, do not think or wouldn't want to think he should be Arsenal's priority. But there's a reason as to why that team makes the decisions that they make. So I'll wait to see. Now, apparently, Aston Villa's insistence is that Morgan Rogers will cost a club record fee in the excess of £100 million in doing little to discourage Arsenal. Chelsea and Manchester City are all understandably interested. Okay, then the other thing, yesterday, Dejad Space ducked Thomas Partey in the team's handshake. That's just petty. That's all I can say about that. Anyways, moving on to the transfer gossip and speculation as compiled by BBC Sport. Let's quickly run through this. Quick fire, Zidane or Ronaldinho? Ronaldinho any day. But Zidane was astronomical as well. Manchester United and Arsenal tracking 22-year-old Bournemouth and England midfielder Alex Scott, but any successful move could cost both £60 million. Now, according to The Athletic, they report that Bournemouth do not want to sell Alex Scott. I think he has about 2 years left for his contract. They want him to sign a new contract that will then include a release clause. But we'll have to wait and see. As soon as Andoni Iraola made the switch from FC Bournemouth to Liverpool, there was a lot of speculation linking Alex Scott with a potential move to Liverpool as well. Arsenal are also in contact with Leicester City over a deal for England under-19 winger Jeremy Monga. He's only 16, with the Gunners planning to pay a fair fee for the 16-year-old and avoid a tribunal. That's according to The Athletic. Real Madrid will open talks with Chelsea over a transfer for their England international. Real Madrid will open talks with Chelsea over transfer for their Argentine international Enzo Fernandez, 25, having made him their top midfield target this summer. That's according to AS. Aston Villa have expressed a strong interest in West Ham and England winger Gerard Bowen, 29, but an agreement could be difficult until Villa make player sales. Okay, as says, we already have Gallagher, thus do not need Alex Scott. Completely understandable. Okay, then Aston Villa have also made it clear to interested clubs that they do not want to sell 23-year-old England midfielder Morgan Rogers. That's according to Sky Sports. While Newcastle are showing interest in Cologne and German under-21 winger Sadio Elmara, 19, and in contact over Lille and Belgium forward Matthias Fernandes Pedro, but Liverpool are also waiting in the wings if they fail to land RB Leipzig and Ivory Coast Yan Diomande, 19. So, as well as PSG's Bradley Barcola. So, Sadio Elmara is one of those players that have been discussed as one of the wingers that teams are looking at. I had an opportunity to watch a few clips of him here and there, and he does look fairly good. Mitchell's okay. Dejad Space is quality if you play him at right back. Okay. Mitchell says I'd rather go for Scott at around 50 to 55 than Matthias Fernandes at 85. Okay, well noted, Mitchell. Depending, I think Man United could be looking at Matthias Fernandes as more of a 6, yet Alex Scott, you're looking at him as more of an 8, kind of, I think. We already have Gallagher, thus do not need Alex Scott. Okay, okay, man, bye. Thanks so much, Ash, for having been part of this morning's broadcast. Arsenal are continuing talks over a potential deal for 26-year-old Atletico and Argentine Julian Alvarez. Now, you remember we spoke about this. Arsenal have been interested in Julian Alvarez since last summer. And Atletico de Madrid, like I told you, would rather sell to a foreign team than a La Liga team. And that's to say Barcelona or Real Madrid. They wouldn't want to sell to any of those. They'd rather sell to Arsenal. Now, in the proposed deal with Arsenal, it would involve Victor Gyökeres going to Atletico de Madrid because Atletico de Madrid are interested in Victor Gyökeres. So that's a known secret. Nothing is been decided yet, but it's a potential. It's one of those potential deals that could happen, or that we'll have to keep our eyes on as the transfer window goes on all the summer. Then Bayern Munich are planning to double French midfielder Michael Olise's wages as part of a deal to keep the 24-year-old at the club until 2031. Real Madrid are interested in Manchester City and Norway striker Brad Erling Haaland, 25, should the 25-year-old winger Vinicius Jr. leave the Bernabeu. That's according to Sport in Spanish. Now, guys, I've seen a couple of reports linking Vinicius Jr. with a potential move to Arsenal and overall a potential move away from Real Madrid. That leads to transfer backers last summer when the two parties are still yet, or were still yet to find an agreement on a contract renewal, where it was believed that Vinicius Jr. was demanding for very, very significant wages. Those the equivalent of Kylian Mbappe, and Florentino Perez is not willing to have it. If Arsenal were to get Vinicius Jr., they would have gotten themselves a brilliant left winger. Now, what would that then mean for Real Madrid is that you have Kylian Mbappe, can play off the left wing. That means you keep Rodrigo Goes. He's currently out injured with a knee injury. Then, so you can play Mbappe from the left. You can play Rodrigo Goes. Then, if you can go and explore a deal for Brad Erling Haaland and make him your target man. But even if that were not to be the case, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But if there's one thing that Florentino Perez is not afraid of doing, he's not afraid of making an unpopular decision, in parting ways with players that are brilliant. He did so with Mesut Ozil, he did so with Angelo Di Maria, and things like that. So, anyways, okay. Manchester United are expected to launch an official approach for West Ham and Portugal midfielder Matheus Fernandes in the coming days, according to Team Talk. I'm surprised they haven't already. That's according to Team Talk anyway. Borussia Mönchengladbach and Switzerland defender Nico Elvedi at 29 is open to a move to Leeds United, while Aston Villa are in talks with Flamengo over signing their 27-year-old Brazilian defender Emerson Royal. That's according to Talk Sport. Yes, Aston Villa are interested in signing Emerson Royal. That came as a bit of a surprise for me, by the way. But we'll have to wait and see how things transpire in the coming days to the effect or to the extent of transfers. But expect so many things to keep happening in the coming weeks. Anyways, Didier Deschamps has returned home. He's not expected to be on the touchline for France's last game that will be played on Friday, I think, against Norway. And that's because he lost his mother. So according to Ben Jacobs, Didier Deschamps has returned home following the death of his mother, Jeanette. He will be absent on compassionate leave for the game against Norway. Thoughts and prayers with the Deschamps family. Very, very unfortunate news there for Didier Deschamps. Let's wait and see. Then we know Arsenal closing in on the signing of Jeremy Doku. Sorry, Jeremy Monga, not Jeremy Doku, Jeremy Monga. But anyways, guys, it's been a pleasure doing this with you for the last 1 hour and 45 minutes. Like I explained to you, our failure to do a live broadcast last night was little to do with my own making, but rather a collapse of technology, collapse of technology. No pun intended. Okay, extra special, Pedri Bola Thank you so much. Mitchell Wainscourt, Aunia, thank you so much. Dak, thank you so much. Dak Minio, Ash, Summer Banks, Ayan Pandi, thank you so much. There's somebody else. Yes. Ustamov, thank you so much. And every single one of you that has been part of this morning's podcast, allow me call it a morning, and I wish you the very best of the rest of the day. We'll look to be back at the earliest opportunity to have the conversation once again. Stay blessed, and until next time, peace. Bye-bye.